So I'm gonna start recording. Yay, welcome everybody. This is exciting. I'm super excited about today. We are wearing pants. We have established that everyone, well, Nelly and I are wearing pants. You don't have to be wearing pants. Those of you in the audience, but whatever, live your life, do whatever you want. My name is Meredith White. I teach Spanish just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, Spanish 1 and 2. We have been hybrid all year. So if you notice like a visible twitch, that's why. It's been a very long year. We were just talking about how we're ready to start fresh, just cut, we're in this weird holding pattern right now. Like, don't do anything too new, but also maybe not boring, whatever. We're doing the best we can. So our objective here with these is obviously to hear from our incredible guests, but hopefully beyond the information, you also feel like you are not alone, because you're not, and that this experience feels a little less disheartening and defeating maybe than it could. So just that we're stronger together. In the chat, and I'm sure Kelly will start us off, Kelly Sita. Like I said, I'm just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And so if you wouldn't mind, tell us kind of what your affiliation is with languages, or what levels you're teaching or supervising, or what your position is, and where you find yourself these days. Where are you located? It's really fun to see some of the connections made within the chat, just from people going, oh, hey, you're in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm in Madison. Thank you, Charisma. Awesome. And all those kind of connections. So it's kind of fun. So without further ado, Nelly, you want to take it away? There we go. And you should have, I think now you have the rights to unmute.
Yeah, I have the rights. I'm like, yeah, I'm not, can you all hear me? That's been my favorite, my first thing, not even hi. Can you all hear me?
Right.
Yes.
Right. Amen.
So thank you so much for being here today. I'm very thrilled, but I have to say quite stressful as well. I've been spending my days teaching in French, and then I have now to think in English. I'm like, what? So bear with me, and I will try my best to bring a decent pronunciation. But thank you so much for being here. So I'm going to narrate what I will be doing. So I'm going to share with you my screen so that I have some slides. And I am myself a visual learner, so I need to have a lot of visual in order to be able to function. So before, this is a conversation, right? So when Meredith, in her very generous invitation, she reached out to me, my first reaction was like, oh no, I've not been presenting, it's just no. And then the way Meredith framed this, it's like a conversation that we are going to have. So I'm not an expert in what I will be telling or presenting, but as you will see, it's more linked to a personal narrative, things that I've been experiencing and things that I've been seeing as a bilingual, but also as a woman of color, as a teacher of color, and also here in the US, as a teacher in the US, and living in different worlds and, in between cultures. So it's really going to be like a conversation. And I really hope that you are going to interrupt me anytime to, just share, if you are willing to share your thoughts, experiences, or any question that you have, please feel free to do so. So my name is Noury-Ossia, and I am a French teacher, and this is my second year. Well, this is my third year as a high school teacher. Before that, I taught for many, many years in higher education in 2 different US universities. And I am from Houston, Texas. I'm sure that you can see with my accent, right? But I lived for 10 years in Houston. So I'm more like the y'all, I miss that. But I am now in a new school. So this is my second year as a French teacher in Lexington High School, which is in Massachusetts, so definitely not Texas, and in the town of Lexington. And this year I'm teaching 3 sections or 4 CP French, and then 2 sections of French for honors. So my students are between intermediate mid to intermediate high, and some of them are advanced slow. So they're pretty advanced, as we say. So which I think that it's great for, having conversations and staying in the TL. So this is just about me. So I have to say that I just want to talk about the title because, and shout out to Meredith. She's, you all know that she's amazing, but I don't know, sometimes the way you function, like within seconds, you come up with stuff. So Meredith, what I loved, asked me, be our guest, right? But then you can present on whatever you want. And so I was like, okay, I have some expertise in some stuff, but at the same time, we have all been talking about, I don't know, authentic resource, and so many people that are doing that so much better than me. And then I said to Meredith, Meredith, I would like to talk about my experience, but also maybe bring my students' experience in this conversation. And I would love to talk about bilingualism. So as I was explaining to Meredith that, I feel very awkward when we talk about, being bilingual is a superpower. And you have it here on the t-shirt. I've seen it many times, like it's a superpower. And then what's your superpower? I'm bilingual, or I'm a teacher. What's your superpower? But I have to say that as someone who is considered a bilingual, I always feel a tension, not a tension, like I'm tense. When you ask me, my first instinct, answer is not, oh yes, I have a superpower. I speak like, I don't know, 3 languages, for instance. I don't know, like I have a pause, I'm like, no, actually, and that's why I love, and the title is Meredith Invention Creation, when it's like, as I would say it in French, like bilingualism as a superpower, because as you will see, the way I see it, yes, it's a power, but at the same time, it can also be very oppressive. We have, languages that has been used as tools of oppression. And so I think that this is important to have a more nuanced conversation when we talk about bilingual education and when we talk about bilingualism.
Well, I think it's really superficial when we do it like that, like when we say like because it's this novelty, it's something extra and special, instead of the expectation in much of the world, it's like a privileged thing to be able to say like, oh, your superpower, because it acknowledges that most people here don't, are monolingual. I was seeing something yesterday which you just made me think of. I think it was maybe Adrian Brandenburg or somebody on Twitter kind of pushing back too on that piece of like tourism. We say, Nelly, don't you want to be able to speak French when you travel? And it's like, like that's not the only purpose, is to go talk to other people in other places on vacation or whatever, like that kind of narrative of other and of like this thing that is in this different place. But I think all of those are really, really tied together.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing this up. I think that I saw the tweet and I was like, wow, because we use that, as a tourist, this is what you can do with language. Like it's like a brochure, we are presenting languages as a brochure. And I feel that, so that's important to have like maybe a more nuanced, a perspective on who is considered as a bilingual. And this is something that we are going to be asking ourselves, and I'm going to ask you to reflect on that with me. So here is this first slide really embodies, encapsulates how I feel about, this bilingualism as a superpower. On the one hand, we have been hearing that a lot. Recently, we had a lot of on my, so I'm on Twitter, and I was reading a lot of people saying that, knowing another language, learning another language can, it's the best weapon. I don't like this word, but to fight against bigotry, to fight against racism, to fight. So it was like, again, this superpower that if you know this language, then we are better, then we are stronger, and then we can, establish, I don't know, an equitable and, word, and where we will all be free together. So that's what I've been seeing. And this is mainly mainly something, an ideology, or what we call a language attitude that we have in word language education, right? As a privileged space that we have within schools. This is the rhetoric, this is the kind of ideology that we are using with our students in order to encourage them to pursue languages, right? To go beyond the requirements if you have requirements. And this is something that I've been using myself, a lot. But then on the other hand, if we look at what is going on, right? Like in the media, and there's so much more example that I could have used, but this one is, which is, a screenshot. And this one was very, for me, it was, again, it showed how I'm feeling about being a bilingual and being considered as a French native speaker of French, because French is perceived as a prestigious language. And here in the US, like I have students, I have, people usually, oh, I'm studying French because it's, I don't know, the language of diplomacy, because it's so refined, with haute couture and haute cuisine and all of these things. And I'm like, wow, like the prestige that is staying, it's historical, but even nowadays we have people who are still thinking as French as a prestigious language, and almost forgetting the fact that it's an imperialistic, language, So here's this one story, right, that maybe you've heard about it. So two women, they are together minding their own business, and then they're speaking in Spanish, right? And then you have an agent from the Border Patrol who is going to arrest these women, and they are going to be detained, right? Because they spoke Spanish. And what was so, I don't know, frightening, and also when you see again your own privilege, is when the agent was asked, would you have done the same thing if they were speaking French? His answer was, no, we don't do that. So here, like where I am, at this crossroad between being a world language teacher who is using also languages of, take French, French is going to help you. We are, I don't know, the fifth superpower or something like that in the world. So I'm using that as well, right? We want to have our students. I want to keep my courses. But at the same time, when we see the realities of languages that are spoken, and let's be honest about the conversation, we're not talking about white people speaking Spanish. We're talking about people of color speaking Spanish. And there's the difference is here. It's people of color, when they speak their heritage language, automatically they are stereotyping, about paper, like Border Patrol agent. Imagine you're in a convenience store and you have someone from the border like that. Well, because we have all these stereotyping going, about Spanish speaking people. But whereas, he said that, no, absolutely French. No, I would never, arrest anyone, because you're speaking French. So I think that it's very revealing about the state that we are in, and the fact that in world language education, I think that we need to, when we talk about our field, we also need to be cognizant of the fact that it's not the reality for people whose first language is not English, and who are bilingual. However, their bilingualism is seen as a threat. And I think that that's the example. They're seen as a threat. They're seen as people who should not be there. They're seen as people who do not fit in where they are, in Montana. And so, and here we see the difference, right? The way you are treated if you speak French, but again, as a white person speaking French, and then if you are women of color speaking Spanish, you're not going to have the same treatment based on the language that you speak, and also based, of course, on how you look like. And I think that this is something that I would like to be cognizant of as we move on in this conversation.
Absolutely. I was talking about this to a colleague today. She was saying one of her icebreakers was like, so where are you from? Whatever. And I was like, oh no. I'm like, no. But she, she was talking about stopping doing that, and, all those kind of things. And I said, right, because no one ever asks you where you're from, because she's white as well. Like no one ever says, oh, Meredith, where are you from? Or like we've said in past webinars, it's not only like deficit mindset, it's like you said, like a threat mindset, but it's really endearing if it's me speaking Spanish. Oh my God, your Spanish is so good. Like, where did you learn? And it's impressive, as opposed to, what are those people saying? Are they talking about us? What are they doing? What are they planning? I mean, it's like all of those people, like jump, step, whatever. We have to realize that.
Absolutely. And Meredith, I really would like to thank you for being so open about, your privilege, like as a white woman. And I think that it's very important when we have this conversation, and we are going to be talking about positionality. And I think that it's so important when you put yourself out there and you share your own experience. Because what is funny is that when people hear my voice on the phone, like I speak French, no one is asking me where I'm from. Like I'm French and I have a Parisian accent. But I can tell you that if I call them, they have never met with me, and I go and see them, I can see that they were not expecting Nelly to look like me.
Fascinating.
And then they would ask me, they would say, your French is so good. Are you from Lebanon? I'm like, no. Like, and so is your mom French and your dad? And I'm like, no. And I'm like, I'm French, like I'm French. Do you want me to show you my passport? So I am French, but of course I'm not only French, but for me, I always have to justify, why I don't speak French with an accent. So this is a point where, it can be very, like when we talk about microaggressive language. However, as someone who speaks English with a French accent, I have privileges. Because when people, they hear the French accent, right? Immediately they think that, oh, you must be educated.
Fancy. Ooh.
It's fancy, exactly. So even though they might ask me, but where are you really from? Where are your parents, grandparents from? But the fact that I have a French accent when I speak in English is a privilege that I have witnessed, I would say, all my life, and especially here in Massachusetts. Not, I would say, in Houston, because people think that I'm Spanish, they cannot, I guess, I don't know. But here, like the French is like, oh, okay, like very positive stereotyping, which is still stereotyping, right? But I can see, so I've been seeing the two sides, right? Being considered as like, oh, wow, but you don't look like French, but at the same time, wow, when she speaks English, she's real, right? I have the real accent, so I'm not lying, and I'm really, really, really French. So I like to see that we have these different, but similar, I guess, experiences. So about this, I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but I would like, when we move to forward to our discussion, to say why I've been thinking about, bilingual education, about bilingualism, and why am I always insisting on the fact that please let us have, as word language teachers, a more nuanced, conversation. And so so when I moved from Houston to Cambridge, so I live near Cambridge. So I was looking for, a career change or something, but I like, teaching. So I was like, maybe I can become a high school teacher, like high schoolers are fun. And so they said, sure, but your PhD in French and Francophone studies is not enough. And from a US university, your experience, it's only with undergrad and grad students. So you need to have a master's degree to teach in public schools, but because of the, I don't know, we have this for the licensure, if you want to be, I don't even remember, but if you, after 5 years, they give you like a provisional license, but then if you don't have your master, then bye-bye, like bye-bye button, as you mentioned. You need to have this master in education with an emphasis in language education. So yeah, so I was like, okay, let's go back and, get a master degree now. So I was in word language education, but at the same time, and in linguistics. So I had to take a lot of classes about second language acquisition, something that I didn't like before. Like linguistics was absolutely not the field that I liked. I always felt that it was just too much science for me because the way it was taught. However, while I was taking this course, I met a wonderful professor who, at that time, was she's still the director, the program director for bilingual education. And so she was teaching a class, which is historical and contemporary perspectives on bilingualism. And this course, which was an elective, by the way. And I really think that in world language education, we need to, like, if we are reframing and, reorganizing all the teaching, we need to have courses within the field of bilingual education. And when I say that, because when we talk about bilingual education, we don't talk about world language education. Bilingual education is mostly about students that we call English language learners, right? And this is what is missing in our field in world language education. Like, we see ourselves as language teachers, but it's also like this privileged side, of world language teachers. So there's no connection, between what we are doing and what our colleagues are doing as ESL teachers, for instance. I think that we could find a lot of commonalities, right? But these are at least the way in universities and in programs, the way language education is framed is there is a separation between you want to become a world language teacher or you want to become an ESL teacher and teach to English language teacher. It's really two separate ways. Right. And so for me, being able to take this class, it really helped me to have the theory, there were feelings that I had, right? But then I was like, am I exaggerating? Is it really something? But then having the theory and reading about lives of people who were interviewed gave me it was very empowering in the sense that I am not imagining, that I have privilege when I speak French, but I don't have privilege when I speak my heritage language, because you see that, well, I'm not the only one actually, like historically, this is something that has been happening and mostly within our educational system. The way we are framing language education, again, is not through the lens of equity when it comes to our English language learners or emergent bilinguals. I think that it's a better term that we can use. Something here is missing. So this is when I started, reading a lot, having like, for me, it was the best time for me to learn more about bilingual education and try to find some ways, to make connection. And for those of you who maybe are familiar with the work of Bettina Love, she wrote, "We Want to Do More Than Survive." She has a beautiful chapter, chapter 6. She has a beautiful chapter where she talks about the power of theory, and she makes a comparison with theory being her North Star. And I feel that for me, it was the same. It's not that I love theory, but I think that theory gives you the language to put into words feelings that you have, lived experiences that you had. And also, I think to make connections with other people who are not sharing your life, experiences, but they're sharing some of the things you can find commonality. So I think that for me, this has helped me a lot. Oh, sorry. Okay. And I used to be more active on Twitter. Now I'm trying to take a mental break, but I've been talking a lot about this. Hey, I'm a world language teacher, and please let's have again a different, let's just reframe the conversation that we have within our field about bilingualism being again a superpower. And I think that, so this is some of the things that I've been sharing. Some of them were just me ranting, but others were more like response to something that someone said. And I was like, wow, wow, this is amazing. So let me just add this, and trying to also bring, I think, our world language colleagues, to see that there's something that maybe we can do as word language teachers, right? Like if we have this space of privilege within institutions because we are mostly bilingualism is taught to the wealthiest and whitest population. And again, think about the people in your school who go beyond their language requirements. So they would be my students, they are in 4 honor, right? They could stop within 2 years, but they decide to continue. But the more they advance, the more the demographic becomes similar almost, right? The space becomes whiter, like let's be honest, it becomes whiter, but also the social, I would say, status of my students becomes wealthier because they can travel, because they can participate in the exchange program, they can receive students from friends, they have a big house or whatever, the resources. And so we start losing some our students because we are in these sites of language seen as a privilege. Yeah, so that language seen as a privilege, and we start losing some of our students. And then for me, I mean, if I'm completely honest, like I can see my students, I'm like, wow, I mean, most of them, so economic, like their social economic status is the same. They're coming from very wealthy and privileged family, and they go in France, they go to Canada, and Canada is like, okay, you know, like Canada is because, you know, it's not far. So there's nothing special, but they go to France and they travel, I don't know, during whatever and so they have the means, you know, to bring the language that they have been learning in school to bring it outside, right? They go and see. So as you mentioned, Meredith, the tourist side, for instance, but more than tourists, everything that they've been learning, they can use it multiple times. And then some of them, they go for study abroad for 6 months, 1 semester, 1 year. But again, who can do that?
Right. Well, and who can do that? And who are we making believe they can do that? Because if our methodology is elitist, if we only want certain students in our upper levels, then sometimes we teach a certain way and we pride ourselves on, well, my class is really hard, Nelly. And so only the best get to level 3 and 4 and 5 and 17 and 18. Geez, I mean, it goes on and on. So I think we do it in a few ways that have come up on Twitter recently. We put our most experienced teachers in the upper levels a lot of times. We leave the lower levels who have the biggest classes, usually with the least experienced teachers, because they did their time, whatever that means. And we save the trips for the older kids in the advanced levels, like you said, who typically can afford it, who don't need fundraising options because, you know, the funds can raise themselves. And our methodology, we tend to then weed out kids that can like make it with the rigor of the upper level. So by the time you get past, like you said, ours is called like college prep too, just, you know, just your basic level 1, 2. Once you get past those, you see smaller classes, you see people start, I mean, they'll even promote kids based on behavior. Like, oh, bless Martha, she's not very good at Spanish, but she'll love the upper levels. Like, it's like gatekeeping language, even though we say we love language and we want to expose our kids to all sorts of things, but maybe not all of them. And that ends up being the message, which I think is, I think a lot of people defend in ways that maybe they're not seeing, like ways that might be kind of not that on the surface, but when you get to the bottom of it, that's what's going on.
Absolutely. And I think that, again, it's not about how you perceive languages, you know, because you can see languages, I don't know, as a social equalizer. You can see languages as, you know, as an opportunity for all. Everybody can learn a language. But it's just that, again, we are within educational systems, right? The way our educational system has been, not created, but the way it has been established, you know, we are in world language education, really, as you mentioned, Meredith, I love the word gatekeeping position. And I can see that because in my previous school, I taught the French one, I had a lot of students and I was teaching the French AP.
Right. Oh,
I'm like, what happened between the French one and the French AP?
Right.
Where are the students?
Where is everybody?
And I thought that I was teaching in a very diverse school. I don't see diversity in my AP class, right? And when I'm talking about diversity, I'm also talking about the social economic diversity, right? I don't see that. Most of them, they've been traveling multiple times, in France. They have family there. They have, I don't know, private tutor. They went to bilingual schools.
Wow.
So you see here, like between the French one, like we receive like all of them, you don't need to know any French. And then by the time who gets to go to the French AP, the gatekeeping did the work, right?
The ones with the key get to go. And we give out all these little keys, that not everybody even gets to see. And then it's like,
absolutely,
welcome. This is very special. You'll love French 4 because in French 4, you get to blah, blah, blah. Well, what about French 1 and 2? That's the class with the 36 kids. And like they, and typically a lot of them, if they're just, if they're in upper, let's talk real about high school. Yeah. They're in 11th or 12th grade and they're in like Spanish 1, French 1, I'm like, what happened? Who didn't offer you a language before this year? It was seen as an extra, oh, I don't know if you'll be interested. Just take Spanish and get it over with. And whatever, like kids have the right to obviously, check a box and they might not be into what we do, like we are into what we do, but damn, like why do we get to decide that and they get in there and go, oh, I really love this, but I'm going to graduate and, bye or whatever. And what about
absolutely. And by the time then they go to college, then some of them, the ones who get to the AP class, they're going to receive credits. So they may just don't, they have enough credits for their requirements at the college level. So they don't have to take another language class, or they can go to the upper class, like French 300, 400. But then the others that they were not offered the opportunity to take like French 1 when they were like freshmen, they have to go then, they don't have enough credits. Then they have to go at the university, they have to pay, let's be honest, because it's a lot of money. They have to pay for language classes. So I had them, and I can tell you that I was teaching French 101, and the resentment, not against me, but I understand, why I'm like 20, 19, why do I have to take French 101? Why is it a requirement? Right. And so, which I understand, because you have to invest in something that maybe if you had been taking a language, you could have, get enough credits. And so you see that it's like a ricochet, as we say, it starts maybe like, in middle school, but then who gets to get the credits, who gets to be in the higher classes and who gets to go back to college. And again, you have to earn your, credits for languages. So that's another aspect that I've seen as someone who taught in higher education. Yeah. So this was just, some of the things that I've been sharing again about the fact that please remember that we need again to have a different conversation. So because we talked about higher education, or even within your own school, or let's just, as you mentioned, be real, within our own world language organizations, right? Do we all have like a section, why study languages, right? Why should you take a second language? Well, if you look at them, like you dig deeper into them, at the college level, I'm just choosing the college level, the number one is like, wow, it's going to be helpful in your profession, right? So again, we are, language is a commodified, it's a commodification of languages that we have that is going to help you to climb the social ladder. And I love here, and in life, what do you mean, like it can help you, in your career and in life. I'm like, I don't know. And I just picked it from one university. It's the same for many universities. I'm like, what do you mean by that, in life? Like, can we be more specific? But you see, profession is the first, right? Because when you go to college and you have to get a job, this is where language is going to help you.
Right. Lordy. I just said in the chat, Stacy Margarita Johnson, when she was on, she said, just, like languages just help us love better. And I was like, oh my God, I love that. Like, can we just say it enhances our life? It enhances our ability to love, but it's like also not a guarantee. It doesn't, like you said, learning a language, acquiring a language, we're not automatically poof, look, I'm open-minded and I'm not racist and I have
Yeah,
no biases. And you're like, no, that's not how it works. Just like in
absolutely.
methodology. No, I use comprehensible input. I am pushing an anti-racist. No, none of these are automatic, but they help, the languages are gonna, what we do with them can help enhance our life. And I just thought that was really, I was like, man, write that down, somebody. That really stuck with me.
I love that, I love that, having this other, but, why not? But no, like, let's think about the commodification of languages and just forget about the people, right? We forget about communities. Let's just focus on what the language can bring to you, not what you can bring. Maybe, maybe you can bring your own cultures in the language. Maybe you can connect with others. No, it's like what the language, like, again, in terms of money, can bring to you, And then again, really, like, for me, it's like, I don't think that taking 3 years of French is going to get you a better job. Let's be honest about you. But, maybe minoring, that would be great for me because it gives me more students. So I'm going to have my job, right? But like majoring, I'm like, I always say to my student, if you tell me that you want to major in French, I would say no. But if you tell me a minor, I would say, yes, go for it. Unless you want to be a teacher.
Right. Yeah. Then you have to get 7 degrees plus that extra master's.
If you move to Massachusetts.
So don't do that.
I'm the perfect example, don't do that. So I'm starting here by the perception that we have in mainstream media about bilingualism. If you just go and Google, like, I don't know, the bilingual brain, or I don't know, the advantages of being bilingual, and you look in mainstream media, and this is something that I've been doing. For me, like, it's important to do like the research, but at the same time, I'd rather see bilingualism through the public eye, right? Like something that is maybe more relatable to others, and something that we see in mainstream media, because we see a lot of, we have conversations about, being bilingual. However, the commonality is that it's always framed within this cognitive advantage of being a bilingual, right? Wow, bilinguals are smarter, right? This is the New York Times. Speaking two languages can protect against dementia, mental decline. The BBC, the amazing effect, the amazing benefits, benefits, the word benefits, again, it's like commodification of the language. And then 6 potential brain benefits of bilingual education. So in mainstream media, we have an obsession, right? There is an obsession with bilingualism, right? But through the neuroscience perspective, right? It's more like the science of being bilingual. And we forget, for me, the way I see it is like, we forget the people who are living this bilingual life, the social aspect of being bilingual. So it's something that, like, learning a new language can bring this it's like language, a neuroscience approach to language, like, really, and this is something that, for me, the way I see it, it's like the pull factor. We have, when we talk about immigration, but I think that this is something that we can transfer. We have the pull factor and the push factor. The pull factor is all the benefits of you, learning a new languages, right? And then we have the push factor, which is you learn a language because you had to do, like, your personal circumstances, and you had to live abroad, or something happened and now you know a language. And I'm going to talk about that because that's why I speak French, actually. So you see, like, the fascination, but again, and I think that for me, that was something that, and I'm a neurodivergent person, so I'm a neurodivergent bilingual, and my daughter is as well. So for me, when we talk about the ability of the brain, I feel that, wow, this is, again, I don't feel seen here, because are they talking about neurotypical people or do neurodivergent bilingual? And what does it mean to be bilingual? So you start doubting your own bilingualism when you have this kind of, perception. And then we have, Nelson Flores, who is the like he's been writing a lot about, English language, ELL students. He called them like emergent bilinguals. And he's been doing a tremendous good work as a researcher, but also as as an intellectual, public intellectual, I don't know, a public intellectual. And so, and he said it here, right? When we have these cognitive benefits of bilingualism, when we are being ableist here.
Absolutely.
And this is something that I did myself, the number of times when I said to my students, learning this new language is going to help you with doing this and this and that. And I was having an ableist language, and I am a neurodiverse person, but I was, being ableist in my own ideology when it comes to learning a language.
Absolutely.
Because it felt like I had to justify almost my profession, right?
Right. I was gonna say there are so many things we have to like defend, I guess. Yeah, justify, I think, is a better word. Like we have to talk about why we're doing what we're doing and convince. I mean, we don't. I here in the U.S. we don't live necessarily around a lot of people who value, hence the superpower. So it's seen as this other thing, and so it's like we've almost gotten into this trap of like, let me tell you why this is important. Let me tell you why it's worth it. I can help you. We have to be really careful about that, especially depending on the materials and the curriculum, and the perspective and the voices and all the things that we're pushing onto students.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But again, this is something that I've been doing myself. So I'm not saying that I'm also, I'm recognizing that I've been doing that with my own students, like I'm justifying why they should be taking French 4, like come in my class, because this is how, learning French and, going through your proficiency journey is going to help you and blah, blah. Like I had a list of things for my students, But again, I was using absolutely an ableist language. So this is one side, right? The side that we have in world language teaching, the side that I have been promoting myself as a world language teacher, the benefits, always thinking about the benefits, what being bilingual can give you, like can bring to you almost like, and I feel like this is a sense of entitlement, like, why would I take this language? Because it can give you money, because it can give you a better job, like this sense of is something that is due, like, it's you don't earn it. It's like I need to have to take advantage of the fact that I am taking this language, right? So I feel that in my world language educator, as a world language teacher, there's this side, but then on the other side, when we look at the work of ESL teachers, right? English as a second language teacher, and then we have our English language learners, emergent bilinguals. What is interesting, and I would say intriguing, but also so, it's not unexpected, right? Before, for me, seeing all the research, I had this emotion that there's something here that is missing. Well, how come that bilingual education, and I think that the titles here are just so revealing. Again, we are in mainstream media, and you can see how can being bilingual be an asset for white students and a deficit for immigrants.
Damn.
And in PBS NewsHour, you can watch it. There was like a very nice documentary about that. Bilingual education can be an asset for white students, but a deficit for immigrants. And I would like to add immigrants of color here. Like I would like to push it further and say that we're talking about immigrants of color, and also we're talking about certain languages.
Absolutely.
Languages that, languages, yeah.
No, absolutely. I was gonna say, Carol mentioned in the chat too, like, welcome to my world of having to decorate a bulletin board. We do the same thing, Carol. Like, hi, welcome, Latin, the SAT, the ACT, like, oh my God, with these benefits of learning a language that,
Thank you, Carol. We can all relate here.
Oh, it's so frustrating.
We can all relate. And so just going back on this, if you're on Twitter and you, or if you're not, maybe you can just, just to see what's going on. Another professor that I admire, Dr. Anya, and
Queen.
wonderful, again, brilliant researcher, but at the same time, bless you.
Thank you.
But at the same time, she's also sharing her knowledge, with the public, because she's using social media. And so someone just asked, what's considered trashy if you're poor, but classy if you're rich? And she said bilingualism. Yep. When she said that, I started to laugh, right? Because I was like, oh my God, that's so true. And then I was crying.
Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and it's like you see the clips of, the clips at, what were we just talking about a couple of weeks ago, the clips at grocery stores, people are interrupted, like the Montana tweet headline, but just happening in really common places. Not that Montana's not common, you know what I mean? Like a store or something, Starbucks and Kroger, and, people just yelling at people. And when you twist that in your mind and make them look a little bit differently, like Enid mentioned in the chat too, like because it's so often associated with race, and again, like it's trashy on this one aspect, but classy on this other one, what is the, if it gets intervened, what does the intervener look like? What do the people look like? Because a couple of white people speaking French at Starbucks probably aren't going to have the police called on them. But you twist some of those like variables, I guess, and done. It's a totally, totally different conversation, literally.
Absolutely. And then for me, so I answered back to Dr. Anya, and I was like, think about your own experience, or like if you have kids, or if you're in a bilingual family, what your teachers or the doctors said to you when, or you mentioned, there's a form I had to fill in for my daughter, and I was so naive, when they were asking, what are the languages that you speak at home? And I was so happy, it's like, yes, we speak like Farsi and French. And then they said, well, now your daughter, who was born and raised in the US, who is only using English, and I have to push them to at least speak some French, forget about Farsi, some French, she has to take a test. And I said, why did I say yes? These kids, they are only speaking in English. This has become their first language. They were born and raised in this country, right? But now they have to take a test in the midst of a pandemic because mom was happy and quite proud, to say that, yes, we are a multilingual family. So I was like, and then I said, can I change my mind? No, you can't. So they had to take a test to prove, and that was so, they were hurt, like, why do we have to take a test? But we do speak English. Why? And then I was like, I'm sorry, I just made this mistake. Yep. And so, imagine you're a kid, it's like, so, but is it wrong to say that we are multilingual? Is it wrong to na? So you leave that with your own kids, but you have students who went through the same exact process, right? They indicate in their, I don't know, when they want to register to the school that they're speaking their home language is not English, it is something else. Automatically, we don't look at their experience where, we don't even ask them questions. We could just have an interview. I don't know. No, you have to take a test, a proficiency test. And I'm still wondering who gets to decide about the proficiency levels, right? When it comes to, like your first language is English, but you still have to demonstrate that you are proficient in English. And so that's questions that I had. So they had to take the test. They were okay, but I have to tell you that it was very difficult for them to just admit that, wow. And, they were not happy. Mom, you could just have said English. And I said, well, I'm sorry, next time, I would just not mention that English is not the language that I use with them, actually.
Right.
And also for me, so here, just some a little background, for me to, and I'm going to talk maybe more about that after, but so when I was not meant to become bilingual, right? Like I was born and raised in the Middle East. I'm from Iran, so I'm Iranian. My parents are Iranian. And So in the way my parents had seen their lives, like we would have stayed in Iran, have our life in Iran and travel maybe abroad, but, just as tourists. So becoming a bilingual was, I guess, something that was not really something that my parents had in mind, or even my, I don't know, my trajectory. Like this is not something that, at least in French, right? But then life happens, as we say. And so for my parents, like, so we had a revolution, we had a war, 8 years of war. And at that time, my dad had to flee from Iran and he went to live in Germany. Then from Germany, he went to France. And my mom said, I just want my kids to be with their dad. I miss my husband. Where we didn't, but we never thought that we will be living in France. It was just like, well, we're going to just stay for 1 year, a revolution. It's going to last for 1 year. These people, they're going to be, going, and then the country is going to be back as it used to be. So we had this, my mom, she had this, the return, this myth that many immigrants families have, but it happened so that we went to France, and my dad passed away, and my mom, because of the situation in Iran, she had to she couldn't go back to Iran, so she asked for political asylum. So we became refugees. So the reason why I speak French, for me, you see, it's not because French is a beautiful language or because it's very romantic, or just because I was just born and raised in France. It comes with a story of loss, lots of trauma. So you see when I say that, for me, being bilingual is not a superpower, because for me, the fact that I'm bilingual means that there is a story of trauma in my family. I've seen a war. I've seen, I have vivid memories of, very traumatic scenes. And so, and then there's also the story of loss, because you lose your country where you were born, you lose your family, but then you become bilingual. So when I think about myself being bilingual, my heart is always very heavy. Because I don't have like a beautiful story to tell. I don't have I just traveled and I love the country. No, it's, for me, the fact that I'm speaking French is because we were refugees in France and we could not go back to Iran. Like it was forbidden for us to go back, and then we could not. It would have been too risky for my mom and for her family. So, so I think that experience for me shapes how I see bilingualism, and how sometimes I'm like, stop. And the thing is that I'm not the only one. In our classroom, we have students who have the same story as myself, like their parents. But I don't share that with people. It's new for me to share that. I have colleagues who don't know that, like, we were refugees and things like that about me. They don't know that I've seen a war. They don't know that about me. But I'm like, but you have students. I promise that we do have students who have family members who have gone through exactly the same thing that I'm talking about. You have students who are in your class taking French, Spanish, but who have lost the opportunity, the privilege, I don't know, the right to know their heritage language, because their parents who were immigrants, or their grandparents were told by doctors, by teachers, that their languages, their heritage language, was an obstacle towards their assimilation process. Well, we don't talk about assimilation, but it was like an obstacle towards becoming fully bilingual in English, right? Fully bilingual in English. And so please try to speak in English with your the dominant language, because for me it was French. So my mom, they told her, speak French to your kids. Why do they need Farsi? There's only like one country who speaks Farsi, and you will never go back to Iran, okay? And then so you should be speaking French. And my mom is like, but I don't know French, like I'm learning myself French. Why do you want me to speak French to my kids? Like there's just like dichotomy, like sometimes this connection that monolinguals have, and as if erasing your language, like this language loss, it's so brutal. because you lose an important part of your identity. So my mom, she said, thank you very much, but no thanks.
Yes,
But that's the thing, because you see, she had the education, you know what I mean, Meredith? Like, she was educated, she had the power, the knowledge, even though French was not her language, but she had that understanding that she very nicely, she said, thank you very much. And then she said to me and my brother, she said, never, never, never. We may have lost our country, we may have lost this and that, but I cannot speak to you in French. It would be ridiculous for me to speak to you in French. And then we are, and at the end of the day, we are going to return back to Iran one day, right? That was the myth, you know, that some immigrants' parents, they have. One day, next year, and it's been going on for like 25 years now, you know. But like 1 year, and then for my mom, it was important, like, we are gonna go back. So these kids, they cannot say that, oh, look at them, now that they come to French, they have lost their you know, connection with their heritage language. They feel French now, they feel white now, they feel European now, you know, all the baggage that it brings when you are almost sometimes caught in the middle of cultures and in the middle of languages and in the middle of, you know, life experiences. So we had that. And this is a reality that I'm still seeing now. You know, it's not that, oh, it happened in France and, you know, it was like, I don't know, 35 years ago. No, because I have students, I talk to parents and they had the same experience. Teachers telling them that if you want your kids to do well, you know what, you should just let go of your heritage language, like stick to English, it's much better for them. So I have students, for instance, you know, Asian American students, or even my, you know, my students from the Caribbean, like Haiti, like they are taking, for instance, like for me, it's like they are taking French because their parents were told that they should not be, that they should be speaking English, and so forget about their heritage language. So on the one hand, here I am as a world language teacher telling them all the benefits about knowing a language, but at the same time, here are students who went through a loss, and the loss of having this connection, you know, with the language of their grandparents, with the language of their family members, with the language of people who stayed behind. You know, for me, all my family, they stayed behind. We were the only ones who were in France.
Wow. I feel like that's super, when you phrase it like that, with that loss really centered, that feels really emotional for me, because all of those reasons that we've cited and that I know I've said, and like you said, you've said, and we've all said for selling our program, feel really insulting to you. You know what I mean? To people who, you can go on vacation, you know, you can be a tour, you can, screw you. My entire life, you know, is in this other place. And I feel, you know, there's a piece that has been the power dynamics at work, and the monolingual privilege and all of those things have given people, you know, license to say, yeah, don't worry about learning, lose the Farsi, just do French, and like, that'll be fine. And what an abuse of power that is. It's so upsetting to think of it, not, like you said, just the beautiful parts of language that we know, but also the mutually existing really ugly parts.
So yeah, so that's why when, again, for me, whenever we talk about, you know, like, oh, it's so beautiful to be bilingual, I'm like, yeah, but in what language do I sound beautiful when I speak? Because when I speak French, yes, you know, I have people like, they hear me speak French and like, and you know, they know like 3 words of, oh, j'aime les croissants et le pain au chocolat, you know, they just like, okay. And you know, exactly. Yeah, and a bye-bye button. And then on the other hand, that's very funny, because when I speak Farsi, no one is telling me that it's so amazing that I speak Farsi.
No, but what? Oh my, I mean, I totally believe it, but also, what?
Yeah, the Farsi is always like, but why would you? And even with my kids, it's like the question, do you speak to them in Farsi or in French? And I'm like, please don't ask me the question. I want to cry when I think about it.
Yep.
So I'm like, well, actually, for a while, they went to a bilingual school, a French one. So I was so lucky because I spoke to them in Farsi. But my kids, they don't respond back in Farsi. So I feel that my husband and I, we are both, born in Iran and raised in France. So we are the last, that's horrible, the last generation who have the Farsi with our kids. The Farsi is lost. And it's not just a language, right? It's like a heritage that you bring with yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that you have from your country of birth that is left. Like, and the oral tradition of your family, of your grandmothers, of your aunts, of your cousins, that's the only thing that you have, that remain. Everything is lost. We're talking about being refugees. We're talking about not being able to go back to your country. So everything is lost, but you still have this language, which gives you this connection that I'm eager for connection all the time. I'm eager to fit in. So this gives me the sense of connection with many people, not just with people from Iran, but from many people, because of this story that I have, because the hurt, that is associated to language, right? It gives you this connection to other people who have been, through similar experiences, or who share a similar bilingual background, as we can call it.
Well, and just so many language stories are stories of exile. And like you said, stories of seeking refuge. And, I think when we flip it and really look and say, like again, the where are you from, but take it deeper. I had a friend who was going to do an icebreaker in the early days of French one, actually. And it was going to be, let's go around and let's appreciate the diversity. What does everyone's name mean?
Oh, God.
And I thought, that's what I was like, oh no. Because to me, it means a couple of things. You're supposed to know what your name means. And then if your name's like not white or Christian centering, or like from here, whatever that means, but white, straight, neurotypical, I mean, all of the like privilege checklists. Now you have to explain yourself, and now you have to like know what your name means. Ew, all of those kind of things. So when you flip it, who aren't we asking where they're from, what their name means, where they, because no one's asking me if I speak Irish or Gaelic. No one's asking me if I can speak, because that's the centered perspective. That's the expectation. And that, you've got the English, you've got the, okay, again, the checklist. And I think forgetting that seemingly simple question, like that one, what do you speak with your kids? Why didn't you teach them X? Why do you choose to teach them X language? Can be incredibly personal and incredibly really intimate, private questions. I've never thought of it in that way. How and that feels very emotional for me, like to hear you talk about that, like how invasive that can be.
It is, because you have to justify yourself, and then you feel sorry, and then you have to, and then again the feeling of guilt. And so I'm like, it's tragic, and then I could have done things differently, but at that time that was that's how it happened. So I think that it's important, and I think that it shows that, again, there are different ways of being bilingual. I feel that if we can have this conversation about there is not one way of being bilingual, it can help some of us, who are like multilingual, but we have not transmitted maybe the language to our kids. But at the same time, maybe they can understand, like my kids, they're receptive bilingual. So they understand Farsi. I speak to them in Farsi, they understand everything. But then they answer back in English, right? They could answer back in French, but they prefer English. But at the same time, am I going to say that they're not bilingual because they don't speak the language? Where are they in the proficiency scales?
Right. Absolutely.
And I feel that we do have students in our classrooms. And so that's why when you mentioned the name, I've done that before, I'm guilty of that, when, you know, I get excited when people tell me, oh, I'm from this country, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, like, oh, do you speak, I don't know, Wolof? And then my student is like, no, I don't. And I'm like, oh, why did I ask? Like, she said that she was from Senegal. Why did, but her parents speak Wolof, you know?
Right.
And then someone, you know, like the name is Spanish speaking. I'm like, oh my, like, oh, I'm from Guatemala. Oh, and I pronounce it different. Oh, le Guatemala. Et tu parles espagnol. Non. Ah,
Damn it.
right? I did it, you know, and then now I have my own kids who are like, no, well, no, no, I don't speak Farsi. Well, French, yes, but, you know, I prefer, and, you know, so I've been in that position myself where as world language teachers, you know, we get excited. We love to have all the cultures, all the countries, you know, like we write them. I used to write them on the board and then pronounce them in French. And then the next question, amazing. So we have bilingual people. No. And when they are willing to share stories with you, it's usually linked to that. Their parents, their grandparents were forbidden from speaking, you know, and most of the time it's Spanish, you know, they were forbidden, like in Houston,
Right.
for instance, where I lived. They were forbidden, like they would get punished at school, the parents, if they spoke Spanish. Like the English language learners, they were not put together, and they were forbidden, you know, for them to speak Spanish. And if they did, they would be in trouble and they would get punished, you know.
Right. Well, and all of those, like you said, it's so much more than language. I was talking with our school resource officer today, and he's Vietnamese American, and so he came over just as like a small child. He arrived here and was saying, you know, we were, you know, kind of laughing, but it was a serious conversation talking about, you know, all the vulnerabilities that come with being raised, you know, being young and, you know, bilingual, having a bilingual, bicultural household in all those ways. And what we were laughing about was the reason it even came up was the workroom smelled like popcorn. And, you know, because somebody burns popcorn and it smells like burnt popcorn for like 4 days.
I know.
You know, I mean, and the second it's you, it's like, Carol, did you burn the popcorn again? Like, oh, sorry. But we were talking about, so that's how it came up. And I said, you know, it's like when you heat up, I used to be like, I would take hot lunch. I would buy hot lunch at school when I was a kid because, when I took leftovers, my mom's like meatloaf. And so not like, you know, they're just like American foods that are boring. So like very bland, but like kids would make fun of me. And so, you know, I heated up meatloaf like one time and it was like, ew, what's that? Gross. And I was like, humiliated. And he was saying, Billy, our SRO or officer was saying, oh yeah, try fish oil, reheating like your mom's Vietnamese food in the 4th grade, you know? And he's like, yeah, you want to lose some friends? Like, just do that, because immediately it's this other thing. Ew, stinks like fish, gross, you're gonna eat that? And it's like layer upon layer of like shame. And then suddenly, you know, it's step by step. And he and I were talking, now you're not talking, you know, now he's on the, you know, payphone at school, right? Remember? Payphone at school, calling his mom, but speaking in English while she's speaking Vietnamese. I don't want to speak Vietnamese with my friend. All of these things that we've all, you know, had some kind of, as language teachers or as bilinguals or as, you know, whatever, some kind of experience with, that we really need to put in the context, I think, of our everyday practice and the seemingly innocent tasks that we ask of students. Really, probably are almost all much deeper than we realize. And the shame and the vulnerability.
And I think, you know, when this shame can also lead towards, you know, like internalized racism, where because you are seen, like for me, you know, I remember that I would say to my mom when she would come and pick me up at school, and I would say, can you not speak Farsi? Can you just use French? And now, you know, and then the other day, my kids, she said the same to me. Why don't you speak French, speak Farsi? And I was like, I was so upset at her. I was like, how dare you? And then I thought about myself and I was, oh my God, my poor mom, you know, like, why would she speak to me in French? You know, that's the thing. Like, it doesn't make sense, you know, and then I said that to her, can you please stop speaking Farsi, because I'm embarrassed, you know, like you're trying to erase everything about yourself, not fitting in. And the first thing that you can erase, I think that it's the language that you speak, right?
Yep.
And so for me, and that's why I refused to learn to read and write in Farsi. She would not stop speaking the language, right? But I could not make her stop, and she would not respond back to us until we used Farsi, right? So I
Wow.
said to myself, how can I be rebellious, you know? But I'm from the Middle Eastern, so I cannot be that rebellious, right? So I was a good kid, but I was like, you know what? I will never learn to read and write. Haha. And then I'm like, look at me. I'm like, shame on you. You know, like, what is the thinking? And then here I'm at bilingualism is a side of, you know, it's gonna give you this, it's gonna open the world for you. And I'm like, why, when I was in this position of knowing my own language, being able to read and write and corresponding with my own family, right? Why did I say no? Because I thought that, you know, yeah, I'm being rebellious. I'm being like, you know, I don't know, a teenager, and I want to be French, and I want to be white, and, you know, I'm going to just forget about everything. And of course, then, you know, fast forward, I don't know, 20, 30 years, like, why did I do that? You know, but again, because as you mentioned, it's the shame that we have, you know, the shame that you're different. Everything about you is different. And on top of that, you have the language that your parents are speaking, which is different. And then it sounds weird, you know, weird.
Cool. Like, right. Because growing up sucks.
Yeah.
Like being in middle school and high school, and you're so worried. I mean, even, you know, whatever it is, don't drop me off. Oh, mom,
Yeah.
you're too close to. And then you've got like huge identity pieces like language and culture and food. And
Yeah.
you're breaking your parents' heart and you don't even know it because you're just like 13 and, you know, don't, like you said, realize the implications. And oh, it's so reflective and it's so deep. But we, you know, all of those, I think it's all of the environmental, it's the same, it comes full circle. It's the same reason we have to sell our programs, because we've just manifest destinied ourselves out to, you know, monolingual and world power, and we're just going to do it all, but at the price of what? You know, at the price
Absolutely.
of you know, life experiences, and we're all about, like you said, assimilating and blending in, and that feeling of belonging. I think what you mentioned at the beginning, like feeling like you fit in somewhere, is so important at the ages where we're most ripe for language. And you
Absolutely.
know, we're so concerned about that. So it's such a common experience, but doesn't make it any easier, obviously.
Absolutely. Do we have, I know that we don't have that much time, but do we have any question, anything that, I'm not going to present everything, don't worry.
Sure. No, please, we can do 3 days. I told you I put on sweatpants, so I'm pajama.
Yeah, but I'm sure that our guests here have better thing than to do than here.
No, they don't. No, they don't. They can just bye button.
Oh yes, there's a bye button. That's true.
I'll just leave it. I was saying, if that, we keep saying that, and I was saying my colleague is so funny. We were talking about, we've talked about this in previous sessions, but just lying on the Zoom. I was telling Nelly how much I lie on the Zoom, and I tell the kids, if it's the only way I'm surviving is the lies. And so I tell them, if they are not logged into GimKit but they're on the Zoom, it removes them. It doesn't, and so I remove them. And my colleague says, you just have to click the bye button, and she's like, bye bye, and she says bye when she removes them from Zoom. I've been in her class. She's like, ciao, bye bye, you know, after she said, like, Kelly, are you there? Carol, Angelica, hello, bye bye, and she just clicks it, and they never come back. And so I was like, well, you're a genius. So I started doing that. So if you guys want to bye button us, don't worry, we'll bye. But yeah, we could be, listen, this is, I'm so thankful for your time, and just thrilled that you're having such a vulnerable, open conversation, because I think, you know, elephant in the room, like Florencia said in the chat. So no questions, but just incredible comments. She had mentioned too, a lot of times the how'd you phrase it? I'm gonna have to scroll up, but sort of like the cycle of the way we're kind of told to like sell, like oversell bilingualism is at play too. And a lot of times it's our organizations, for example. You know, you can say kind of one thing, but also then you see a huge textbook publisher or something, you know, funding like a big part of a conference or a workshop or those kind of things. And so there are a lot of business aspects that can sometimes make the intentions feel a little bit sticky, slimy, in terms of selling and overselling bilingualism, which
Absolutely.
absolutely affects how we do what we do, and how we're kind of trained to do it, I suppose, in a lot of ways.
I was looking at the chat. There are so many messages, and I'm such a slow writer, so please, I'm not ignoring your messages. And we have so many amazing, chat going on. So thank you so much. I love, the chat option. I'm going to miss that, Meredith, when we will go back to the teaching as before. But anyway,
right. Yeah.
That's parentheses. So then let's, again, I'm not going to delve into that, but again, as a world language teacher, we talk about the seal of biliteracy, right? That's another field or conversation for me where I feel that my students who are taking French within the context as a world language, right? They are going, let us, sell this seal of biliteracy, right? You are going to earn that. It's a beautiful something, I don't know, like a golden thing, I guess. It's good for you. It's good for college, which is great, right? I love the concept of the seal of biliteracy. But then there was a research that was done in Georgetown University, which showed that in most states, including the state where I live in Massachusetts, it's much harder for English language learners to get the seal of biliteracy because the proficiency level that they need to have in English, which is not their first language, right, is much higher than what our students whose first language may be English, they're like considered like native speakers, for instance, the expectation in their proficiency level in the second language that they're taking, so I don't know, Spanish, French, is not the same. So we are holding our English language learners at a higher standard just because of the English that they supposedly don't have yet. They are not proficient enough yet. And as much as I like the seal of biliteracy, the concept, again, I feel very entitled and privileged as a world language teacher to be selling or to be just talking about the seal of biliteracy when I know that in my schools, I have students who will not receive the seal of biliteracy because they are called English language learners, because they are called former English language learners, limited English proficiency. What are these names, these labels that we have for our kids, like the standard is in English. So your bilingualism, like you have the right to be considered as a bilingual and biliterate because the seal of biliteracy, right? It's biliterate. Sure, but English is going to be the main language, the dominant language, which is going to give you the right, to give you the privilege, right, to be valued or to be recognized or to be lauded as a bilingual person.
And again, because it's fancy.
It is fancy. And I think that it's the new AP stuff, it's the new AP, right? Let's have it in our, I don't know, for college application, let's say that I have the seal of biliteracy. So again, I like I'm not saying that I'm against, I like, but the thing is that let's see how your states, I don't know for Georgia and for other states, but think about, like your states, if they have the seal of biliteracy, how is it equitable, right, for students who are considered as English language learners? And let's remind all of us here that English language learners are bilinguals.
Right.
Like, how can you say that someone has not attained proficiency within 6 years, so they are going to be labeled as limited English proficiency or former, I don't know, something like that, because they had 6 years to prove themselves and they did not. So they are going to have this label of not being proficient enough. how can you give this label to someone who lives in a country where you have to function and navigate in English on a daily basis, at school, in the world outside, you know, your family, you are functioning with English. So how can you say that they are not proficient? And so for me, I don't know about them. So that's why sometimes when I think about our can-do statement sometimes, or the proficiency level, I feel like, is it a monolingual lens? You know, are monolinguals determining that as a novice, mid, I don't know, novice high, you should be able, or intermediate, to talk with ease and confidence in blah, blah, blah. But if you have intermediate high, you can earn the seal of bilinguality, the seal of biliteracy as you know, someone in a world language class. Which means, I don't know if I don't have it in mind, but I think that intermediate high is you can converse with ease and confidence about, you know, everyday life topics. You can exchange information, give your viewpoints, and something that our English language learners do at school
all the time.
However, their proficiency is calculated, is seen differently, because we're talking here about the dominant language, which is English.
Absolutely. I've never thought of it that way, like flipped. It reminds me of what VJ Ramjatan said a couple of weeks ago, when he said, you know, we're so focused on making sure our speakers are understandable to sympathetic listeners. Why aren't we more concerned that we don't have more sympathetic listeners? And we just literally have to say in the can-do statements that you need to be talking to a sympathetic listener. Like, why can't that just be everybody?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Flipping the script, like, stop trying to change people's pronunciation and accents. How about make people better listeners from the start? I mean, like, holy cow. Yes.
Yeah, this is the myth of, you know, native speakerism that Vijay is talking about, but there's so many more others. You know, I'm thinking about Suleiman Jenkins, and then there is Parisa Mehran, and they're both in the field of ELT. And so they talk about that, you know, like, who gets to be the sympathetic, you know, native speakers, right. You know. And for me, I feel so, again, when I give this rubric to my students, I'm like, I am very nice. I am super sampa. I cannot pronounce sympathetic. And so please, and then I said, this is, and I don't like that. How can I say to my students who is, I don't know, from Morocco, and he speaks, you know, Arabic and French, but he has his accent, right? I do have an accent, as Vijay, you know, says, we all have accents, right? But I am going as a Parisian, you know, say that, oh, you pronounce, I don't know, something like this, but you should have said that. Who am I, you know, to say that? And I feel like for me, it's like, forget about this in the rubric, you know, I'm going to open my ears. I'm going to be super receptive. And yeah,
out, like, whatever.
I do that, and I tell them, and I think that, you know, let's be honest with our students. When we are not comfortable with something, we can still use it or whatever, or just, you know, but let's tell them, like, why we don't feel comfortable with that. And I think that it opens, you know, ways to, and it can be done in English, right? We're not talking about, you know, staying in you know, this is conversations that amazing, I think, conversations that we can have with our students, you know, about, like, you know, yes, I am a native speaker, but don't, you know, like, don't worry about this in the rubric. It's there, but I'm not going to pay attention to that, because again, I have this myth about what it means to be bilingual, about what it means to be proficient in a language. And as someone who has an accent, a very thick accent in English, and when I'm tired, forget about, you know, pronunciation. When I'm happy, I don't have any words in English, right? So, like, for me, like, forget it. And so I'm like, who am I, you know, to say to my students, well, you should be pronouncing le r, because we don't say r. By the way, I can say r because in Farsi we have r, but for you, you have to say r. Like, I'm like, you know, it's there. You make an effort, right? As I'm trying sometimes to make an effort when I speak in English, but beyond that, I'm going to change the way I listen, like as you mentioned, like become a better listener, it's going to be on me.
That's it, right? Like the onus, yeah, should be on the listener. Like we put so much pressure on the speaker, and colleagues, students get their class changed because I can't understand my teacher. Her accent is really thick. Her English is good, but it's that but, those big buts, right? We like big buts in language teaching. I always say, like, but blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But I can't really understand her. She's nice, but, and we do all the, so what do? The counselor switches the class, and nobody ever says, how hard are you trying? Like, why, she's not hard to understand. Like why isn't it going back at least a little bit in maybe that's a poor example, but on the part of the listener, because now you're putting more and more responsibility on the speaker, or as language teachers, and we're all guilty of, I'm guilty of this for sure. Like you're preparing them for, like, we have so many scenarios that prepare them for the like worst target language listeners. We go, you got to hurry up, spit it out, like say something, because if you ask directions on the streets of Paris and you're going, ooh, they're going to keep walking. Yeah, maybe. But like somebody is probably going to be like, ooh, what? Like, ooh, and try to help you. But we prep them for like the worst, scenario, like, and we put the pressure on the speaker in scenarios that they may never be in. Like, well, if you're in Paris and this happens, if you're in Madrid and this happens, yeah, maybe, but like, maybe not. I think maybe it's hard to admit that so much of what we teach in language is unknown and abstract and highly personalized. And that's a little bit terrifying, because then what do we teach?
And there are so many good stuff in the chat. I laughed. You should read just what Florencia shared. It's just funny.
We like,
but also Enid, I love the fact that you mentioned that it's the inexperience of the listeners. And right? Like if you, I can improve my accent, but at some point I can. There are really things that I just cannot pronounce, right? And I can just, I was listening to some words before joining you. I was like, this is something that I should, if I want to say kudo, I had no idea how to pronounce that. So I was saying, you know what? I'm just going to say shout out. So I was listening to, so I was listening to the pronunciation, and I'm like, but like, okay, but it's like, but if there is something with the accent, it maybe shows that you are not used to be around people with accents, so and for me, the fact that I have an accent shows that I speak another language.
Yep, absolutely.
So
well, and again, who are we surrounding ourselves by? It's like when you had a sleepover or like a pajama party or something with friends that weren't just like you, from a house just like yours, from cultures and whatever. It was like, oh, why do you, you have to go pray, or oh, those are the kind of like pajamas you wear, or you put, a headscarf on, or you have a different kind of pillowcase. Like when we're in these experiences, we learn these things about these people. And I think a lot of times it's the ignorance that we bring with us that puts it back on the speaker, and that says like, oh, I don't know, it's just really hard to understand. But when you're in those situations, it gets easier. There are people in the chat that were like, Nelly, you like do not have a strong accent. Like, what are you talking about? Because they're used to, Enid mentioned it, like they're used to whatever. It's just, they're just listening. That wasn't the first thing that stood out. And so it's an interesting perspective.
And I love that in the chat, we have conversations about the fact how the tyranny of word language teachers, like sometimes we are so strict, like we can be much, we are super strict when it comes to like intelligibility. I cannot pronounce this word.
Perfect.
And so, and I completely agree, this insistence that we have about words that have to be, pronounced in a way. But again, imagine that you speak the language. Like I used to teach a class, and we have Marta here, who is the queen of heritage language teaching. And imagine that you are in a setting where I was also teaching last year a class for heritage speakers, French. And I had people from Canada, I had people from Haiti, I had people from Senegal, and then I had people who were, their one parent was French and the other was from the US. And then I'm like, who am I again to tell them that, well, actually, maybe like shoes is chaussure, maybe you say soulier, but soulier is more formal. Well, no, that they are heritage speakers,
Right.
And again, like you center yourself and you center this standard, whatever French, which doesn't mean anything, and you ignore the experiences of your students and the ways, we can speak a language, the ways we can sound in a language. And this is what we do, I think that we are so open-minded as world language teachers, because we are teaching about cultures and other things. But then I'm like, but seriously, sometimes when we look and analyze, or unpack our teaching ideology when it comes to language, when it comes to culture, what we teach can be super oppressive.
Yep.
And especially when we, as someone, who speaks French and who has like a whatever Parisian accent, I used to say that, well, but in French in Paris, we say that. Now I don't say that anymore,
Right.
Because why would I? Like, you're from Canada and you say something, okay, but and now this is what I say to my students. We all have accents. As a Parisian, I have an accent. So you can also make fun of my accent from Paris because we sound so tight, something like that, And no, that's true. I think that once you establish this kind of connection with your heritage language speakers,
Absolutely.
then this is how you create a safe space for students, and also for them to bring their cultures, to bring their dialects, their sociolect, their whatever, many languages that they're speaking, because bring everything. This is part of your identity.
Absolutely. Florencia just said in the chat, Florencia, tweet that, put it on Twitter. So it's the second time I've yelled, Florencia, tweet that in one of these. Yeah, like speaking without an accent is like typing without a font. You can't do it. It can't be done.
It's beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful? I mean,
I love it. That should go on. That should go on social media.
Somebody put that. I want it on. I want it just. I mean, because that's it. Like it cannot be done. And when you try to pretend like it is, you're again ignoring not just the language part, but you're everything that's wrapped up in it. And it's just like you've got the Freire quote, and I love Paulo Freire, but like you're not neutral. In pretending to be neutral, you're still pushing something. It's without saying anything. I have no opinion. Well, that's an opinion. Kind of so however we're pushing our preferences, travel experiences, language is very personal. And I think it goes back to, again, like vulnerability and shame. If I feel self-conscious about my language abilities in Spanish, if the little shame gremlins that come out say, your Spanish isn't even that good, you didn't even study abroad, you haven't even been to those countries, who do you think you are? Well, then, what am I going to do? I might have a higher standard for students than I actually have for myself, or that anyone in the outside world, when I've ever spoken Spanish, would have for me. And I think that's how we overcompensate sometimes for our insecurities and all of those things is, well, these students need to know it's the Spanish from Spain, by gosh, and none of that pos and vos and paca and pati and what this is official. And I think there's a lot of I don't know, I think there's a lot of emotion and maybe a lot of insecurity kind of rolled up in that sometimes, because
absolutely. And then as teachers, even though we want to be cool, but we see ourselves as we have this authority and this is our classroom, and so this is how I'm going to show that I am an expert. I am the language teacher, and I've been studying. And so I think that, as you said, and even for me again, as it's not about just speaking the language, right, as a native speaker, it's even for me, again, as a Parisian, I need to decenter myself, when I have students from other, who speak French, but they're from the Francophone world. Because again, who am I to say that, oh, actually in French from Paris, this is what, and I used to say in French, I would say that. And I'm like, what? And okay, sorry. as a Parisian, this is what I would like. I was almost, making a disconnection between, again, different ways of speaking French, right? No, because French, my mind, would go to France and to this little country and, imperial power. But you see, this is internalized racism.
Totally.
This is something that I grew up with, this knowledge that there's one way to speak French. It's the French of the l'Académie Française, the French Academy. And so, and and now I'm doing the same with my own students. So we are in this work together. Like, if I have to give a conclusion, for me, we are in this together. I'm not saying that absolutely not. I'm doing mistakes, but I think that what is good is to reflect on what we are doing and see how, as world language teachers, we can sustain our departments, right? But at the same time, how we can use our privilege, in order to build bridges with our English language learners.
Absolutely. Well, and like you said, even just the questions we're asking, when we start reflecting and looking at how we're seeing things, we start going, oh my God, I said that. Oh my gosh, I used to, the same way we would do it with a project. Oh God, I can't believe I used to assign blah, blah, blah. We doing that with the deeper things is more important or equally important or whatever, because LJ Randolph said a few weeks ago, and I've heard him say this at Actful before too, like he has said, and these are obviously his words, like, I, as a Black man, can still teach a completely colonized curriculum. Like, I can still push biases and blatantly ignorant and, racist materials if I'm not sort of like discovering and reflecting and really, what's the word I'm looking, interrogating the materials that we're using as I need to be. Julia Coach out of, I can't remember where she is, but she's in the Northeastern region, says she and I were laughing recently. She said, I still ask people, so, if I find out they're married, she says, so what does your husband do? And she's married to a woman. She's like, I have a wife, and I'm still going, so what does your husband do? The same way LJ was like, yeah, I look and I go, oh, this article's nice. Wait, hold on. Like, let me go back. And I think we're all kind of like, polishing our lenses all the time, or we should be. They're just constantly dusty.
Yeah. So, and if you are on social media, we've seen those tweets that, again, as world language teachers, we are bringing the change. We are, promoting anti-racist practice and praxis, and for me, it's like no, like, I think that we need to constantly re-examine our curriculum, our teaching, again, language attitudes, because we've been talking about languages here, but we need to re-examine, because that's true. I've been doing that. I've done that. I had a textbook when I was the first year that I taught. They gave me a textbook in grad school, and they say, good luck. And I remember what I was teaching, it was only about Paris. It was only, white people. And then I'm like, wow, they must be so, bemused, like their teacher is not white, but I'm like, oh, in Paris, and then we have only white people, and, again, it's the stereotyping that I've been myself, teaching. And I say it, but again, now I feel that we can maybe, I don't know, like, I don't know, for some reason, I feel that because we have so much knowledge and it's changing, the field of world language education is changing. Like, maybe this is the thing that I have. I think that but let's remember that it's a work in progress, and again, for me, saying that I'm a woman of color doesn't mean that I'm going to be anti-racist. Absolutely not. I've been raised in white spaces. I've internalized everything, and I'm reproducing some of the racism and microaggression that I have been subjected to.
Absolutely. It's not this like default thing where, I think, like you were saying before, language is like, look what language can do for you. Feels like language owes you something. And then that mentality of like, you're automatically anti-racist and anti-biased is like, well, now, Black and brown people owe us their knowledge. Like, so Nelly,
Mhm.
help us out, you know. No, do your own research and like
Sure.
look up some stuff, read, talk to people, you know. People and language don't owe you anything, and there's no finish line. Like, it's not like
Absolutely.
we crossed the line. Phew, made it. All right, finally, I'm glad.
Yeah, and it's really a work. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a work in progress. And we always take the proficiency, the path where we are in different paths. Some of us, we have lived experiences, but we are still learning. We're still trying to unlearn so many things. Like for me, I'm unlearning so many things, that have been ingrained in me, in my thinking, in how I should behave, in how I should sound, in order to be seen as the good immigrant, being here in the US as an immigrant, in order to be seen not as a threat, but as someone nice. So I'm trying to unlearn, so many things that, again, that have been, and it's difficult and it's painful, because, like it takes like an emotional toll, but I feel that. But then I hope that someday it's going to be powerful. But again, it's a work in progress. None of us, there's not anti-racism, as you all know, is a work in progress. And decolonizing, we hear a lot about decolonizing our curriculum. It's a work in progress, And so I think that, again, for me, it's like we are in this together. So I'm not... I'm just going to stop maybe now, Meredith, but I'm more than willing to share my slides with you, because I had an activity for you. I just want to mention quickly so as teachers, I'm guessing that we are all, I think teachers in here, educators, teachers, maybe I think that some of us are, there are some people in higher education, but we are educators. I think that the first thing that in everything that we do is to analyze our positionality. And I'm not going to read the code, but you have it. Positionality is, like, for me, like, why do I speak about that? Because it all comes with a personal narrative, my positionality within bilingualism, positionality as someone speaking French, which is seen as a prestigious language, but then being from the Middle East, from a part of the world that is seen as a threat, So all of these things are going to shape the way I'm teaching. That's why teaching is not neutral, right? I am shaped, my experiences, the way I am, is going to shape the way I'm going to relate to my students, to connect with my students, to create a safe or an inclusive environment. This is all linked to the experiences that we have. So I think that in world language education, I feel that we should really analyze our positionality. And the question that I have for you, not now, of course, but think about how what does it mean to be bilingual, right? If you ask you, like, what does it mean to be bilingual? Who can say that you are bilingual, right? Think about it, because what is your definition of bilingualism? And so, sorry, no, I'm not gonna. So this is something that, you can think about later. But I think that it's, for world language teachers, I feel that it's super important to unpack our positionality when we talk about bilingualism. Again, we are teaching other languages, right? But also, what is our perception? How do we position ourselves when we talk about, where is the side of privilege that we come when we talk about bilingualism? And for me, the concept of personal testimony and personal experience is the most important one. When we can relate directly to make connection with your lived experiences, it's more powerful than a bunch of like a theory. Again, I like theory, but having this connection, about, and for me, like, I was born in a, I told you about my background. So all these is going to shape how I see bilingualism, and why I'm very, cautious, and I'm always, careful when I talk about bilingualism, because it's, again, super traumatic, and it's not just, a nice place of anything. And something, and I promise that it's the last one, if you have to read a book about bilingual education, and for people like me who are not, a professor of applied linguistics, the best book for me was written by Shin. I think that her first name, I think that is Sarah Shin. I may be wrong, but last name Shin. And That was the best book. Like I was supposed to read only one chapter, but I ended up reading the whole book because it was written in a way that I could understand, again, as someone whose field is not in linguistics, but also filled with examples from real people. And this is what I love in research, when you have real people, real experiences, because you can make connections. And I think that for me, that was really, really the best. If you want to learn more, about, how we talk here in the US, it's US centric, but how do we talk about bilingualism and also the myth that we have? And I feel, last word, seriously, I would, again, let us reconsider as word language teachers, right? Let us reconsider as word language teachers how we see the learning, the acquisition of another language. And that's my question. What does it mean to be bilingual? If you get the seal of biliteracy as someone, as someone who in a word language class, and you can have intermediate mid, or someone share that you can have your teaching license at an intermediate high, level of teaching. But imagine our English language learners, they don't have the privilege of being seen as fully bilingual, perfect bilinguals, because of the fact that there's something not enough proficient with their English, right? So I really think that in our own field, we really need to reconsider who we see as bilinguals and what does it mean, and debunking all the myths that we have about this perfect bilingual, these sympathetic listeners. What does it mean to be a native speaker? If you go to France, you're going to be speaking with French people, but no, if you go to France, yes, there are French people, but then you will see also people, immigrant people. They may not have the accent from Paris. They may have the accent from the South. They may have the accent from their heritage language, So let's have an open mind about who gets to be this sympathetic listener, which is the native speaker, right? Who gets to be the native speaker that we were talking about? And I think that we really need to reframe how we see the notion of being bilingual. I would share everything with you so you have it, there's reference. And I'm so sorry, I spoke a lot. Thank you so much. You can mute me now, Meredith.
The bye-bye button, click. I would literally never, I would that would, even thinking about that, oh my God, I die a little bit. No, never. I could, that visual is so profound. And I mean, I'm not gonna sleep tonight because now I'm just gonna be thinking. You've given, I know me and I'm sure others, so much to think about, even if it's, things we've already heard or thought about. Like you said, there's no finish line. So there's it's not like, no, I've already thought about that. It's not a checklist. It's not a spectator sport. It's something that we're constantly doing, constantly working on. And that's an incredibly powerful image to end on. Nelly, I truly can't thank you enough. I'm so grateful for just you as a person. So many times we meet people on Twitter too, but we've met in real life for 2 seconds. Do you remember?
I know, but I was too afraid to say hi to you. I have to say, I was like, oh, then no, I can't. How do I look like?
It was so funny. I was like, oh, I know, you're Nelly. We were like, hi, Twitter friends. So that must have been Mafla, maybe it had to have been, I guess, maybe, or Nectful, something.
Anyway. The Mafla. We were at the Mafla, yeah.
Mafla. Oh, I love Mafla. Yeah, no, I'm so appreciative for your story and your vulnerability and your transparency and just everything. You could have said this is going to be a sleepover seminar, and I would great. Should I bring my toothbrush? What do I need? Because I'm all in. So I'm also, I know I said on Twitter it was proposing to people, but seriously, every guest that we've had that said yes, I'm so grateful, because I think these are conversations that are really important to bring to, there are these elephants in the room that we know about, but we just keep ignoring a lot of them. And so I'm just really thankful for you. Thank you so much. And I'm thankful for our attendees as well. I can't listen, after party, right? Again, we're all friends now. So if you people think that you are not, like, you're stuck with me, like, yeah, because I'm, this has been just so fun to host you. So thank you. I'm so thankful for you.
Yeah, and thank you again for your time and Meredith. You have been doing such a great, I don't know, the space that you are creating for us. And again, there are so many, I don't share usually this side of me, my story. But I guess that for me, I feel safe enough, to share that with you. And I feel that, safe enough to be vulnerable and being my whole self, because it's part of who I am. So thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. It's been a pleasure. And I'm going again to share everything with Meredith. So you have the slides and you have everything. And also my email address is here. So if you have any question or any comments, I'm here. And thank you. Merci, merci. In Farsi, we say merci. So you see, merci, merci. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the same. Go away. Oh,
thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you. So where you all went to sign up, everything, like in those, when you pop up and the pictures come up, if you go to, like, if you click to the third slide, the recording will be there. And there's a little tiny computer next to the TV where the all of the links shared in the chat will be. So Nelly will have like her own Wakelet collection, and everything will be right back in that first place. So just give me like a day. I'll give you like 24 hours. And then every link shared in the chat will be there as well. And then the slides and everything. So thank you all so much. And my heart is full and my brain is full. So thank you. Have a great Wednesday.
Thank you. Well, it's almost, the weekend is there, almost.
We are so close. What's tomorrow, Thursday?
You made it.
You made it. We're going to say bye-bye button to the week.
Bye-bye button now. We all need to teach tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.